Hi, my name is Kristen Lockett, and I'm a first grade teacher at Orangewood Elementary School. I started my education at California State University, Bakersfield, where I received my bachelor's degree in liberal studies. I also attended Point Loma Nazarene University to obtain my multiple subject teaching credential. I have currently have been teaching for 2 years, but this is my first year in first grade. My district has students that come from a variety of ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, and about 25% of my students are English language learners. For my project preparation, CSTP 6.3 is the element I chose, collaborating with colleagues in a broader professional community to support teacher and student learning. I also have the element covered that will be covered in this project is 4.4, planning instruction that incorporates appropriate strategies to meet learning needs of all students. My targets group for my project is all first grade students and staff members that are interested in learning how to utilize Lexia tools to reach students at all levels. My project idea was to plan a presentation with staff members on way to utilize Lexia in my own classroom and to meet the students at their academic level. I want to talk about the growth that my students have made so far this year with Lexia. Would also like to use this opportunity to collaborate with my colleagues on ways to use Lexia in their own classrooms to promote reading, writing, and speaking with their students. I would also like to come up with ideas on how to promote student engagement with Lexia by incorporating a reward system. My desired outcomes was to find ways to utilize Lexia that is meaningful to all students. I want to find ways to utilize Lexia resources during whole group, small group, and individual learning. I also want to come up with ways we can reward students for using Lexia as a grade level to get students excited about learning. This was my project flyer. Project reflection. For my project, I held a presentation on ways to use Lexia in my classroom to meet um, my students' needs. I shared useful resources that I found on Lexia in order to help struggling students. I talked about fluency passages, decodable readers, and Lexia skill builders. I also shared data on how students have improved since using Lexia over the past couple months. Towards the end of presentation, I use this as an opportunity to collaborate with my colleagues on that they use Lexia in their classrooms. I learned about Lexia connections, which can be used to introduce, reinforce, or extend a skill. We also collaborated on ways to motivate students to do their best on Lexia by coming up with a Lexia level chart. And then as students move through the levels, they can get rewarded with a small piece of candy and they can pick one item out of the treasure box or both. With students that top or surpass their grade level, they can reward with a big candy bar or something in the prize box. My desired outcome was I felt like was met. I was able to teach my colleagues something. And I was also use this time to collaborate with my colleagues on ways we can use Lexia in the classroom and talk about things that are working for them. This was my project evidence with the Lexia level chart, me presenting, and the questionnaire before and after the meeting. Mentor observation one, I used CSTP 4.4 element of focus, planning instruction that incorporates appropriate strategies to meet learning needs of all students. For my lesson, I hooked the students by showing them real life objects of the short EA sound. The objects that I brought were feather, lead, bread, thread. I showed the students each object, and I had students say the words, segment each word using our fingers. For whole group practice, we used the vowel pattern worksheet. We said the word aloud, segmented the word using Play Doh, underlined the sounds we heard, traced the word, and wrote the word on the line. Then for independent practice, students had to sort the EA words from the short E words. The cut and paste activity included the word and the picture to help all learners. The strategy I wanted observed by my mentor is making sure that I was meeting the needs of all my students and making the appropriate adjustments throughout my lesson. I also wanted her to provide me feedback on adjustments to my teaching and enhance student clarification and student success. My desired outcome for my mentor was to see if I was providing the appropriate strategies to meet the diverse learning needs of my students, or if it was too much, and how well I was able to make adjustments throughout my lesson. For my lesson reflection, at first during whole group, some students struggled with sounding out both the vowel sounds for E and A instead of just saying one sound, eh. So to correct this, I pulled out my secret story card. I read the story about how about vowel teams and how the first vowel does the talking while the other vowel stays silent. It was also helpful that I would have helpful if I would have say the word and then we would segment each word we hear using Play-Doh. Then we would underline the letters of the word that corresponded to each sound. Students became more confident through practice. 85% of my students were successful in this lesson. To know the difference between short E and short EA words. My sorting activity allowed me to see which students were struggling with identifying the words and which ones were successful. Some challenges was breaking the habit of students sounding each letter in the word and instead recognizing that E and A only make one sound. This is my lesson evidence. Here's my mentor feedback. Next steps. Since my mentor challenged me to allow students time to read the words to their friend, I will make sure to incorporate that in my next lesson. I will also incorporate an exit ticket to engage my students' individual learning. My overall reflection, my lesson was successful. Working with my mentor allowed me to make an engaging lesson and to meet the needs of all my students. I found that my feedback from my mentor was insightful and prepared me to ask myself additional questions when reflecting and creating new lessons. My mentor observation two. For this lesson, I focus on collecting and analyzing and assessment data from a variety of resources to inform instruction. For my lesson, I took a skill that students were struggling with and with Alexia and created a lesson to help students with that skill. The skill that most students were struggling with was knowing the difference between the long sound and the long sound. We will begin the lesson with reviewing the sound spelling cards. I will reinforce it by playing a video, and then after the video, we would do guided practice where we say the word together. Um, Color code the OO word depending on the sound it makes, and then write the word. As we were building the word, I would have students give me a thumbs up and thumbs down to see if the word was making the short OO sound or the long OO sound. This way, I was formatively able to assess students throughout the lesson. Then, for independent practice, they would complete a sorting activity and then an exit ticket. I wanted my mentor in this lesson to observe the my formative assessments throughout the lesson and see if I was accurately making adjustments to my teaching if students were struggling. And I also wanted to see how I assess students at the end of my lesson. My desired outcome is for my mentor to see that I'm accurately using the thumbs up, thumbs down, and the exit ticket. And I also wanted her to give me feedback on other methods I can use to collect and analyze data. For my lesson reflection, some students struggled with the difference between the long OO and the short OO sound, but when I told them the story of the short OO sound, I showed a picture of a little boy holding his stomach, and I told students when someone accidentally bumps you in the stomach, you go, and then for the long O sound, I showed them a picture of a chocolate cake and say that when you're at a birthday party and you see the chocolate cake, everyone makes the ooh sound. And that seemed to help students that were struggling remember the difference between the two sounds. Overall, 80% of my students were successful. One of the challenges in this lesson was for students to remember the two different sounds OO can make. But after doing the picture cards, I really felt that students were able to remember the two different sounds. This was my lesson evidence in my mentor feedback. Next steps, my mentor suggests that I incorporate more think, pair, share throughout my lesson. I would like to start making sure I have students collaborate more throughout my lessons. Um, Overall, my lessons was successful. My mentor gave me insightful feedback and healthy praises and critiques. Working with my mentor allowed me to use a variety of assessment strategies throughout my lesson to gauge my students' learning, and I feel that after these two observations, I'm able to create more effective lessons. PLOs that I attended with Math Talks, Universal Design for Learning, and Equity in the Classroom. Math Talks, my students absolutely love. We do them every day, and I feel like my students have gained so much in number sense and conceptual understanding. For universal design, this really helped me with my observations and trying to meet the needs of all my students. And then equity in the classroom helps me to ensure that my students have the right resources available to them in their learning. My growth goals, I decided to successes was 4.4. As a result, I was able to integrate strategies to help my students break apart sounds individually and put them back together. So, applying those appropriate strategies to meet the learning needs of all students. And then next year, I would like to set up more ways to communicate and collaborate with my students' parents through Class JoJo, and also through having meetings throughout the year to talk about any questions, ideas, and strategies. Thank you.